In today's society, cars are not just there to get us from A to B, they're more than that. For some, they are a source of entertainment to see how quickly you can get from A to B. For others, they're a way to get to very remote parts and the best fishing holes. And for a lot of people, they are a status symbol. It's unfortunate, but if you only know one thing about someone and that is the car they drive, then it's quite normal to jump to conclusions about how wealthy they are or how successful they are by that one physical element of their life. Now, as an advisor and as someone who has dealt with many people over my days, both rich and poor, I've come to realize that these conclusions that we jump to are often false. If anything, I've found that poor people tend to spend more money trying to look rich, and a car's a good way of doing that, and rich people tend not to really care. So they focus more on things like, well, what is the car's safety rating? What's its fuel efficiency, and how comfortable is it? Those kinds of things. And the sad part is those poor people that are trying to emulate the rich by buying fancy things like cars, well, that's what's keeping them poor. Their short-term choices are sacrificing the medium to long-term wealth creation. And with the availability of credit for things like cars, it's very easy to spend more than you should. So lately, I've been putting some thought into the question, well, how much should you actually spend on a car? And after some deliberation, I think I have a good answer for you. The smartest and most accurate answer to that is spend as little as possible. Cars are not an asset, they are a liability. They are expensive to buy, they're expensive to run, they're expensive to insure, and they typically go down in value every single year as they depreciate. And the more you spend on a car, the higher these expenses go. However, I must admit that I am actually a car guy. I really like a well-engineered piece of motoring perfection. I like the sound, I like the speed, I like the look. So for someone like me that doesn't just want an A to B type car, well then, what's a reasonable amount to spend? If you ask most people this question, I'm sure a lot of people would base their answer on how much they earn, or worse yet, how much they can borrow. However, I think this is a very flawed method. Firstly, I don't believe in borrowing for cars, or to expand on that, I don't believe in borrowing for consumption in general, and I consider cars consumption. So I'd never base the purchase price of a car on the amount you can borrow. You would only do this if you enjoy being broke. I also don't base the purchase price of a car off the income I make, because income is not a measure of wealth. Your net asset position is a measure of wealth. The guy or girl that earns $1 million a year but spends it all and has no assets to show for their hard work, well, they are worse off than the person that earns $50,000 a year but puts aside 10% of their income. The methodology that I use to justify the purchase price of a car is a percentage of your net asset position. That is the true measure of wealth, and that is therefore how you should be able to justify some of life's luxuries. If you're not aware of what your net asset position is, it's pretty simple. It's just your assets, so what you own, minus your liabilities, what you owe. Now, when it comes to assets, I only include financial assets in this calculation, so things like cash, shares, property, superannuation, that kind of stuff. I don't include any personal assets, so things like cars, jewelry, white goods. Under my methodology, your car should be no more than 10% of your net asset position. And now some of you out there would be saying 10%, wow, that is a lot, and you're 100% right. We go back to the original argument that the less you spend on a car, the better off you're gonna be. However, if you're a car guy like me, then you can justify 10% of your net asset position. This means if you have a $500,000 net asset position, well then you can justify spending $50,000 on a car. However, if you have a partner and your combined net asset position is $500,000, then the combined value of your cars shouldn't exceed $50,000. By following this formula, the amount that you spend on luxury items like a car is always going to be justified by your wealth, as it should be. So the guy that has a $1 million net asset position can't go out and buy a $500,000 Ferrari because that's 50% of their net asset position. However, the guy or gal that has a $10 million net asset position, well, they can go out and buy 2 Ferraris if they want to, because it's justified by what they have. Now, that doesn't mean it's smart to go out and buy 2 Ferraris, but what it does mean is that you've worked hard, you've built up your net asset position, and therefore you can justify those things if it is meaningful to you. And there are times where I would suggest definitely not spending 10% of your net asset position on a car. So for instance, if you're a pensioner and your nest egg is $1 million and you don't have any capacity to earn any future income, well then to spend $100,000 on a car is way too much. That money's probably better off spent going towards creating future income. In my personal situation, I'm currently rocking a 2019 Toyota Camry, the classic old man's car. Now that car cost me $25,000, which is nowhere near 10% of my net asset position. However, I'm at a stage in my life where I want to use my capital in order to invest and build my business, so a car is not important to me at this stage in my life. However, that doesn't mean that I won't spend more on a car in the future. So the key takeaway from this is it's okay to have nice things in life, provided that you can justify the purchase. If your net asset position doesn't justify it, then you shouldn't buy it, and you especially shouldn't borrow to buy it, because that is not a good use of your capital and it's not a good use of your future cash flow. But that's it for me today, guys. Thanks a lot for watching. If this message resonated with you, give the video a thumbs up and I will see you guys in the next one.